Cheers.
Cheers. Here you go, Michael Abbatinozzi. Well, welcome to the studio.
Oh, good to be here.
All right.
Yeah.
So why don't you take it then?
Okay. Well, Mike Semeka.
Right?
We've been planning this for a while.
Tell me. What are we planning? What are we doing?
Well, my intention, if it's yours, is to, we go way back, right?
Thank
we
you.
Go way back. Probably we met in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And since I've known you, or what I know of you, you wear a lot of hats.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many hats.
Many hats. Yeah.
I'm going to name a few of them.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, name them.
So, well, first off, you're a husband and father. And I know that you raised 2 children for the good part of their life as a single parent. You're a chiropractor, a catalyst, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
You are a musician,
Oh, there you go.
an artist, a teacher,
Mm.
an author.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. You are a life coach.
Mm.
So a lot of hats. I'm sure I'm missing a few in there. But
Well, I was thinking about you on the airplane, and all of a sudden I showed up on the screen on a plane ride.
an actor? Did I miss that one?
Yeah.
An actor?
Is that not a funny story?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And you know, I guess, you know, my intention is a lot of people know you in one of these circles,
Mm-hmm. Right.
but they may not know how diverse you are.
Oh, I'm sure they don't.
Why you do what you do and how everything evolved.
Right.
So I thought
Wow.
we could take it back to when I met you. And I remember I met you as you were a chiropractor, you're still a chiropractor, and you had 2 offices, and you were very successful. You had 2 different offices, and I think when I met you, you were just developing your work, which was catalyst work, and I came to the first class. So could you speak on a little bit about why you got into that, or why you developed the work, or what led to all that?
The way I saw it was that in the work that I was doing at the time, I saw that I could do better. I saw that I was seeing that if I followed strict protocols, that I was going to get what I would consider a predictable result. And some of those results were very theatrical, where, you know, people would be, you know, having a very profound sense of awareness. Let's go with that term.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all told that that was healing. And I remembered instinctively thinking it didn't have to be that way, that we could have healing and it didn't have to be overwhelming to the nervous system. It didn't have to be that way. And so I couldn't just continue to do what I was doing, following the protocol, knowing it was going to result in something that I was accurate in how it was going to result. So I started modifying it. And once I started modifying it, I wasn't doing that work anymore. I ended up doing my own work, and I just chose to give it the name Catalyst because that was a very, very term that was very near and dear to me at the time. And I'm really glad because that holds up, you know, just
Can
to be
you
a catalyst.
explain what that means to people that may not?
Back in 1994, what it meant, because catalyst is in chemistry, it's an agent that would actually initiate a reaction, but it itself is not involved in the reaction. So if you're a catalyst, it's like you're a spark.
Right.
And you're a spark for others, and you yourself are not changed. And I've come to realize now that that's not necessarily 100% true, that being a catalyst, you can't be a catalyst for other people without also changing yourself to some degree. But I used to think that was a problem, like that it needed to be where the facilitator, whether it was a chiropractor or whatnot, had to be fixed. That was a degree of professionalism. And you can see that now, even in the medical world, you know, that we have a strict definition about professionalism and what that would look like.
Sure.
And you have to kind of maintain yourself in some kind of, I don't know, manner that's acceptable. And I remember feeling in the olden days that the idea of a catalyst, and we still say this at the end of a session, we'll say, I'm done, you're not. And that the session continues to go on, and way after the time that our time together is over. And that is true. And I used to have this one line that the efficacy of a technique was going to be basically validated or corroborated on how on its efficacy based on whether or not the input of the stimulus was going to one day become obsolete. And so my definition of catalyst back in the day was to make myself as obsolete as possible, to get in and get out.
Mm-hmm.
But that was before I really understood what I came to term as the law of diminishing effects, and that things have a shelf life and that everything wears off, just like sleep and eating. And
so without getting ahead of ourselves here, because you're giving people a lot of information that might not know anything about catalysts. No. So can you just, people, I want them to understand that this is a body work. This developed from what you were doing at one time.
Right.
And you're already talking about what was different about it. Can you give them a little, people don't, it's a very unique type of work. It's a tonal type of work.
Right. That's a term that's really people are using these days. And I understand that. I get it. It does get thrown around an awful lot. The health paradigm basically states that all expressions are expressions of health. So even tone is healthy given the sets of circumstances that went into it. So the platform that I'm using these days is about neuroplasticity and the ability of the brain to reorganize itself and to create newer and newer pathways in higher ways, in more sophisticated ways. Now, when Catalyst first started, it became all about peace, breath, movement, and fluidity. And that was the platform. And that's what I really served the most, because I saw that was going to be something that was going to support optimization, optimal functioning.
Yeah.
So I was very, very important that I stay with peace, breath, movement, and fluidity. And so if people came in and they had a pain, I was all about moving toward. So it was like, if you have pain, tell me, what is it? Are you lacking peace? You're lacking breath? You're lacking movement? You're lacking fluidity? And I really wanted them to be a participant. That's a big part of Catalyst, in understanding what the solution is, that not all pain is the same.
Right. A very different focus. So you were focused on not what was wrong.
Right.
But what the solution was.
Right.
And could you tell a little bit about just for someone that's never experienced the body work, just a real brief what it would look like with someone coming to you? What does it entail? What's the body work like? What is?
Well, you sit on a table, and then I would stand behind you and start scanning. Because of my chiropractic degree, we used to call that palpation. I kind of leave that term for chiropractors. I like the term tactile scan, scanning with touch. And there's also visual scanning, which is known as observation, right? There's dynamic scanning, which is when you're moving the body. There's lots of different scanning. There's even resonant scanning, where you can feel someone's energy, if they're in a good place and not so good place, if they're in a good state, or if they're in an adversarial state where they're having some kind of. And
these aren't easy skills to develop. I know these are skills that are very, so I think it's hard for people to understand that, but and I know I've experienced the work for a long time, and you can get a real sense of things just by how someone presents, without even touching them, and then through the touch, it's a tremendous amount of information that you're picking up.
Absolutely.
That I think is certainly unique to your skill. I mean, not everybody has that skill, and I think that's one of the powerful things about.
You have to scan on a resonant level, because if you really want to just scan the structure of somebody's, spine, for instance, or nervous system, or their tissue, because if they're not in a really good place, or if they're in a recursive place, if they're just going through the motions, that's degree of presence. The more present they are, the more likely they're going to have greater and longer lasting results. So I put the onus back on them, hence why I use the term participant and not patient. Because patient gives you the sense that you're just dropping your car off and getting it tuned up, and then you pick it up and the cars have been rotated, everything's fine. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's about your participation in your life.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference. I mean, I think I'm most really proud of the languaging, the terminology. Yeah. There's so much terminology, but it all supports the same empowering, this is an important outcome, that the outcome is very empowering, which is it enhances a person's awareness. Obviously, that's the the sensory system, the afferent system, the messages going to the brain, their experience of life, and also the motor system or the efferent system, the expression of life, which is the flexibility, the malleability, and the actions that people take. And because of my chiropractic background, I've been very hyper aware, as you even said, awareness specific and dynamic specific. And there's two aspects to the nervous system, what comes into the brain and what comes out of it. And I'm proud that because our stimuli is looking to support peace, breath, movement, and fluidity, that it does so in probably, I would have to bear to say, perhaps the most optimal way possible because of that, because of those criteria.
There's a lot to unpack there. So I'm looking at what we're doing here maybe as for people that may not be real familiar with, maybe chiropractic or Catalyst or especially Catalyst. You developed a manual, and you began the manual back, I think it was the early 90s when you first started teaching the class. I think you probably had a manual for the first class.
Yeah, like 18 pages or something like that.
That's what I remember. The second class was about 18 pages or so. And now I believe it's upward of about 250 pages.
Yeah, it's up there.
So.
It's up there. And I'm telling you, and I want to update it again. I can easily.
And I got to tell you, this is not light material. That's why that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't think there's anything in chiropractic like it. There's a lot of seminars where they hand out notes, and there's information. A lot of it may be cookbook, but this is concepts. This is 250 pages of concepts, and each technique is very, very deep and very, very involved. But I really appreciate it of how you can read one page and stay on that page and get so much out of it. And you can really learn how to do that particular technique because there's so much energy and information in the page. And that's another thing is I know you put a lot of attention on the languaging and how you do this. So can you talk a little bit about the manual and how that kind of developed?
Well, the manual was just like, again, I like to think of it as a companion piece for people who were taking the Catalyst class, that they would have something that they could review, because I know, like, could you imagine if we just turn off the camera right now and say, what did you get? It's like, you only pick up so much. And so it was a way for people to integrate, to review. And so the manual, to me, when it first started, was really a companion piece to help people integrate what they were learning, that they can go back and read these words, stimulate what we call neuroassociations, and go, oh yeah, I remember that now. It opens up that, cortical map in the brain, if you will, or that part of the brain gets upregulated. And I was very, very excited about that. But I did want to finish a little bit of the previous question, because I only got to tactile scan, about what the session actually looks like. I think that's a really important component. And so, after I would do what I call a tactile scan and actually just check out your body, looking for what's working in your body, looking for areas that have the greatest degrees of peace, breath, movement, and fluidity. Everybody else is so used to finding what's wrong and being a fault finder. And that is a real problem. That's the problem, is for being problem focused. So I have this thing called the spillover effect, right? So if you're focusing on what's working, and then like an area that's breathing more deeply, and then you take that area and you direct it into an area that's not breathing so deeply, and you let these two areas communicate and interact and however they want. Maybe they resist each other. Maybe that's how they communicate, that they don't talk to each other, but that's how they're communicating. And the more that you do that, the more that you begin that process of inner negotiability, where the body starts negotiating more with itself, and then the body becomes more dynamic, hence more plastic, which is what happens. The natural organic tendency is to move toward more peace, breath, movement, and fluidity.
Yeah.
So I do have people go like face down on a table, and I will scan their bodies, looking again for peace. And all the different techniques that we have, some that are enhancing awareness and some that are enhancing body dynamics. But I will move parts of your body just to get awareness into certain areas and to get you to be more of a participant in what's going on. So it isn't so much that I'm scanning the body, though I'm doing that, but it's that I'm helping you know about the state of your body, or even get a load of this, helping your body understand the state of the body, which goes below the threshold of the cognitive mind. And so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. Can we stay on that? Because that's huge. And there's a reason why you do it that way, obviously, because you practiced for a long time. And there's a reason why you're looking for what's right with the body, not what's wrong with the body, which really is a very, very different approach. Most people, when they have a symptom, they feel that there's something wrong.
There it is.
And they want to, fix it. And you're looking for what's working in the body. Where is their breath? Where is their movement? And how can I enhance that?
Absolutely.
And so to me, and it's a big part of the philosophy, is you're working with the intelligence of the body and not thinking that necessarily when there's a symptom there's something necessarily wrong. It might be perfect. It's a concept I know you talk a lot about, considering the set of circumstances that preceded it.
Most definitely is. It's perfect.
So, for I think people that are used to a different model,
Absolutely,
like a medical model, there's a really lot there. So let's stay on that in terms of symptoms, the intelligence of the body, focusing on what's right, not what's wrong. I mean, there's a.
Can I? If I'm going to start there, I'd like to do the disclaimer first. More importantly is that there's something called multiple truths. There's definitely different approaches. There's pliers, there's hammers, there's different approaches. The medical model is not wrong. It's just not right in all situations. There are some times when things are just not a medical emergency and times when they are. And so you have to understand that is a factor here. And so the reason I created Catalyst is because there was a deficiency in people focusing on what's working. I wasn't seeing that in the world. It wasn't happening that people were going, I have this, there's a reason I have this is happening for me, not to me. And so the health paradigm stating that all symptoms, all expressions are expressions of health. People will think I'm absolutely crazy until you unpack it. And I'm saying that for a very, very important reason. And again, we're not deficient in the medical model, in the biomedical model, in the therapeutic model. And so that's always going to be there. And this is not to be an alternative to medicine. So I do have to really explain that, because I mean it. This isn't just me trying to cover my ass legally. It's like, no, I mean this stuff. There's a place for everything. You don't bring pliers when the job calls for a hammer. And you don't bring a hammer when the job calls for a screwdriver. And unfortunately, we do know in our society we have overutilization or overprescription, which is, I understand we're trying to cover our asses for the fact that it could be a serious issue. So the whole idea of the model that I've been coming up with, and I have so many names to describe them, but I do like thrivapeutics is the overall general term of this, that the thrivapeutic model is that you can thrive independently of whatever expression of health is presenting themselves. Now, those expressions of health that are presenting themselves are perfect given the sets of circumstances that preceded it. Now, you have to understand that this is not to be a threat to the medical model or people who are we call it paradigm wars, right? They're actually married to, oh no, if I got a symptom, something's wrong. Houston, we got a problem here. And it's like, I get that. I get that brain state. It's actually more of an animalistic, primitive reaction to feel that. It's not of a very sophisticated, it could be right, but it's not of the higher mind. It's not coming from the prefrontal cortex, right? It's not your higher functioning cortical map, upregulating itself. Right. It's a very animalistic, primal way of being. And I wanted to do things that were going to enhance people's function, both autonomically, meaning within the body, and then the individual and his or her body, and the individual and his or her environment. And I do believe that the body work does that, but nobody's talking about it. So I wanted to bring that out and go, this work has high implications. And again, it's not to take away from therapeutic work. And there are many, 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 many people who do therapeutic work. There's conventional care and then there's alternative care. I wanted to have thrivapeutic care that was in addition to that. And to whatever degree you're doing that, great. You don't have to change it. But just know that you're probably deficient in the thrivapeutic approach. Sure. And you should sure consider this, because it's going to have positive implications in your life, but not at the expense of because all truths. These are all truths. But understand, this is a different paradigm, and I see that there was a call to answer to bring this in, to bring this forward.
So for people who, are used to a traditional paradigm.
Right.
Okay. And, I know in chiropractic we talk a lot about the term limitations of matter.
Right.
Right. And, so we look at symptoms, we think of the body as intelligent. I know you and I talk a lot about the body's evolved over millions and millions of years. So it has a lot more education than 8 years of doctor school.
I love that.
So so we, the body is intelligent. However, in chiropractic we talk about limitations of matter. So for someone that's in the therapeutic model, I guess for people sometimes it's hard to trust. And I think this is a term that you would talk a lot about in the teaching, was that there are symptoms that are of growth and development,
Right.
developmental type of symptoms,
Right.
and there are warning signs.
Absolutely. Warning signs,
And how
symptoms,
does
and adaptive.
somebody really navigate that? That maybe doesn't have a lot of trust in their own physiology, or not an understanding of maybe where we're in terms of what we're talking about, and because many people, any symptom that comes up, they're automatically going to there's something wrong here. And
Let me answer that, because I think you have to lean into it. If you're at a point where you don't have faith that life is intelligent, or you're a little unsure or unsteady, you don't have to go guns a-blazing into this. You can be as subtle as just considering the possibility that maybe. And if you give yourself permission, just consider the possibility that maybe, that little window opens up. We call it wiggle room, right? You have more wiggle room where you didn't before. If it's a threat, you're probably overwhelming your nervous system. You're probably considering it too much. Back off, because you're not helping. But it shouldn't be a threat to consider the inquiry of is this a warning sign symptom telling me that this is a call for me to make a change? Or is this an adaptive symptom, meaning that change is actively happening? Mm-hmm. And, and all I got to do is add grace to the process, or go with it, And you may not know, or you may believe and you could be wrong. I mean, these things happen, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why we're trying to be as prudent as possible and cover our bases. I like to call it a committee meeting, right? You want to have a committee meeting with all versions of you. Invite the skeptic, right? Invite the person who's hopeless. Invite the person who's fearful. But don't also, at the expense, give them full reign and allow only their voices to be heard. Consider a therapeutic perspective as well, and just lean into it, and then see what happens. And you begin to find that you can develop your understanding or trust or faith in the body's processes. And of course you could be wrong, but that's fine. But again, everything is already there in the world anyway. So you're not missing, other options. They're still there. I think that we're bringing a breath of fresh air and offering a lot of hope to people who are hopeless, in this model.
Yeah, I love the model. And I think with symptoms, because I think that's like a big issue for people. I mean, we're constantly, we see these drug commercials where anything that's going wrong, and if there's not a name for it, they'll make one up when they get a new drug. So in terms of symptoms, and I remember listening to the radio show, you mentioned, how I can put it into context. Well, if there's something going on that's affecting us, maybe somebody's has a situation, they see something, they're sensitive to something that's going on in the world, and that they feel that, so that maybe they become a little depressed, and so I remember in the radio show, someone's mother had died, and you said, they said, well, is he depressed? Someone said, is he depressed? And you said, I wouldn't give him that label, because it can be a healthy thing.
Absolutely.
To express these things, right? But we tend to label them. But obviously, there's a point when, if you're not able to function well in the society,
right,
then, so we don't want someone necessarily to stay in depression. So can you talk a little bit about symptoms from that context, and it's a really big thing.
Let's start this way. Holistic health is a redundant term. You got to realize that. Holistic health is a redundant term. Health, if it's fully health, is holistic. And if the only way you can be healthy is you can only think of things one way, you're probably not very healthy. You're probably locked in some kind of ideology, and your brain's not as malleable and as plastic as you possibly could be. So when someone was asking me, is he depressed? And I said, I wouldn't give him that label. The reason I said that is because he might very well be depressed. Somebody who's qualified could give him that label. And even if he qualifies as being he who is depressed, he could still thrive while carrying around depression. And now most people would never consider that, as depression is like having blue eyes or green eyes or a red shirt or a black shirt. It's just what you're carrying around right now. Most likely it's a season. For some people, the seasons last far too long for them, and they begin to maybe double down or become hopeless on having an adversarial relationship with it. Now, what if he really does have depression and he's being treated with depression? Okay, that adversarial relationship is already happening. They're having that dynamic going on between patient and condition, right? And so they do whatever they do for that. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, there's a human being in here. And what if? Are you willing to consider the possibility that maybe this is happening for a reason, happening for you, not to you? Let me tell you, just that consideration alone, as much as that might be a threat to the medical model or seeming like a threat, it's not meant to be. Because one day, I really believe, not in my lifetime, but medicine is going to be talking like this. This is going to somehow make its way into conventional care. Mm-hmm. We're just, what do they call that when they're early adopters, right?
Yeah, I think they're already starting to realize a lot of these.
Well, I heard one time the American Cancer Society said, do you think you'll ever find a cure for cancer? And I can't believe they said, our job, whoever the new CEO was not to find a cure for cancer. We just don't want people to die from cancer. We want them to die with cancer. And I'm thinking wow, they're getting it. That's as close as I've ever seen to getting it. Because people, a big one in the health paradigm, right. Healthy people die. Right. Now, we know that. We know that we're going to die, and yet we seem to be obsessed with the label or the name of what it is that brings us out, what's on our death certificate. What do you have? What did you die from? What are you dying from? And we then begin to enter an adversarial relationship with that, even though we're all dying the minute we're born, the minute the egg cell hits the sperm cell, even before we're born. Mm-hmm. Some of us never make it to full gestation. So we're all going to that place, and going there doesn't feel good. Especially if it's a slow process. Now, if you get hit by a car, it probably doesn't feel good. It's a quick process, But if it's something organic, you got to realize that healthy people die. Mm-hmm. And we're just going, well, it wasn't a healthy person. It was a person with cancer. It was like, that was a healthy person with cancer that died. But I look at what people do, the rituals that they do when they get a label. And I think that diagnosis is great. But there are two different types of diagnosis, and you probably don't even know this. There's victimizing diagnosis, where you then have a defeatist mindset, or even if you don't have a defeatist, because after you go into victimizing, there's 2 points there. There's a defeatist mindset, and then there's the one who wears their diagnosis like a badge of honor. They talk about it all the time. I've got this, I've got that, I've got this, I've got that. Now you can see that they're having a relationship as if it's bad, but they're hiding behind it, and it's almost as if it's a badge of honor. Now, it's a cruel thing to say, and I understand, and please forgive me if it seems harsh, but I think the harshness helps, because besides a victimizing diagnosis, there could be empowering diagnosis, and that's the other type of diagnosis. When you get a diagnosis, does that help you to really live? All you got to do is remember that you're going to die soon, and you end up living a lot better. If you think you're never going to die, you're probably wasting your life. But if you know you're going to die, how many people, when they get diagnosis, take the trips that they never took? Mm-hmm. They start to really live, and they'll say, wow, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. This last year of my life was the best year of my life,
Right.
And, they'll say I love you to people that they never said I love you for, sure, just to get their affairs in order. And so this is a shame, because that's the reason that I'm doing this, because I believe that's a result of there being a deficiency in the therapeutic model. Mm-hmm. But I believe if you're learning how to thrive independent of whatever expressions of health that you happen to seasonally be entertaining right now, and it is a season, then now you're probably, no lie, even though it's not therapeutic, you're probably more optimal for recovering from such a dreaded condition, even though it's not really a dreaded condition. It's perfect. Dry mouth. You don't suffer from dry mouth disease. You just need to add the water. And that's what that's a warning sign symptom. Mm-hmm. Now like if you're having a baby, here's a baby coming, you're in great pain. I wouldn't say it's a warning sign. I would say that's an adaptive type of symptom. Change is actively happening, and it's happening so much, it's intense for you. And so you need to be in those inquiries. You don't need to be, but let's just say it's empowering to even consider the possibility that maybe there are two types of symptoms, maybe that there are two different types. Let me just recover that. There's two different types of symptoms. Warning sign, meaning there's a change that needs to be made. And then there are adaptive symptoms, meaning that change is actively happening. And it's perfect and it's healthy and it's exactly what has to happen. You don't want to be coexisting with dry mouth going, this is an adaptive symptom. No, you have a call to answer, right? At the same time, you don't want to be treating having a baby or going to the bathroom. You know, these are changes that are actively happening,
right,
you know, so that's important. And then there's the two diagnoses. I'm just reviewing right now. There's victimizing diagnosis, which breaks up into two. You can have those mindset where all of a sudden the defeatist mindset, or you can also have the badge of honor. And then more importantly, there's empowering diagnosis where, oh, now I know what I got this, and I'm going to handle this. Now, probably in our society, it's going to be a mix of handling it therapeutically and therapeutically, or at least I would hope so. Because if I got this and I'm just going to handle it therapeutically, then you're entering an exclusive adversarial relationship. I have a great line that says, I wouldn't advise you to voluntarily enter into an adversarial relationship with something that shows up organically. That's a mouthful. But when you realize that it's happening for you, then you're more apt to find your purpose in life, to answer the call, to even create a story around it where I say, I turn chaos into purpose.
While you're handling it.
Therapeutically. Yeah, but that's why I use the term sanctification, because if you can assume that it's happening for a reason, that it's part of life's intelligence and not
so
that
you're
something.
Much more active and participating.
You're participating.
In whatever the type of treatment
and
is.
Empowering. And then you're more likely to be grateful for it. Now think about it. If you're in a state going, I'm grateful for vomiting, because it's getting rid of the food poison, it's actually a healthy response. That's going to change your functionality. You're going to be more optimal just by having gratitude.
Right.
But if you're not seeing it that way, and if you go, oh, I'm sick, I got to do, think about what's going on in your physiology and neurology, all the bodily processes that are following you, and it's actually a curse. You might as well you're like a witch. You're putting a spell on yourself by saying you're sick, and you're believing it. And so the spell is working. And you're doing it. It's you. Even though it's a reaction, I get it. But you got to realize that if you're living off of a reaction, it's not a reaction anymore. If you're ruminating in it, it's no longer a reaction, right? Now it's a choice. Now you're participating in it more fully. It's no longer just, hitting the knee and the patella reflex, right? It's not a reflex. It's not like clonus, we got a problem here. So anyway.
Negative plasticity.
Right, right, exactly, right.
That was awesome. So I think we hit symptoms pretty good, and it's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot there, and I don't want to lose people, but I think they can get a good picture of what we're talking about from that. So I wanna stay. We're still kind of. I'm going back. There's so much you've done over these years. You have a. We talk about left brain, right brain, people are one way or the other. I think you got a lot of both. You're creative and all that, but you're also very organized. You
Virgo.
You can do both. Yeah. Is that a Virgo?
Yeah, Virgo's very linear. We're neat freaks. Everything's in order. Everything's got to have its place.
So with that being said, you and I think you don't share this a lot, and a lot of people don't know this, but you wrote a book, The Guardian Within. Mm-hmm. And that was written a while ago, and I know a lot of. It was an amazing book.
Still performing pretty well.
It's one of those books that, again, just like the manual, you can stay on one page for a long time, and just.
I recommend that
so
actually.
Much out of it. Yeah.
People have to get out of the habit of trying to read a book like it's a novel from front to end, because you will be overwhelmed, and then you'll put the book down, and then you'll go, "Oh, this book is overwhelming, so I'm not picking it up."
Good point.
And you are what made it overwhelming, because you got to stop. You got to be present to the book, and if all you can do is a sentence, then stop at that sentence.
Good advice. Very, very, very rich. Same with the manual, and it's a lot. It's very deep into the concepts of what we're talking about.
It's a red pill book.
In the
Michael.
work.
It's breaking it down, right? It's going down that deeper dive, we call it, right? Taking the deeper dive into these ideas.
And I guess. That was written a while ago, and I love the book. But I know since then you've done other things as well. I think a lot of it, from my understanding, is just cleaning up terminology and things of that nature. I know you've developed successions, and I'll get you to talk a little bit about that. But in terms of the book, in terms of the Guardian Within, is that pretty much still how you look at things, maybe with just some different wording in there, or
Michael,
what's changed with successions and things that have happened since then? Or?
Honestly, I think that a lot changes. First off, all of this stuff comes from Catalyst, which is very exciting, that this all stems from the practical application.
We're going to go back. I want you to talk on everything, but I want to go back to that because that's huge.
That is huge. Yeah. Because that's what makes it practical. People, look, if I get any kind of accolades whatsoever from people who are brave enough to actually come into this work, and Bill worded it very well yesterday. He said that participants are people who reveal themselves to be able to be participants, that they're not patients, and that that's what is that people who migrate to this work are people who really thrive at being a participant rather than they're dropping their car off. And he mentioned that yesterday. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I really do believe that.
Yeah. And that goes back to a lot of what you were saying, taking responsibility for your health, not just dropping your body off, picking it up later and treating symptoms. It's really actively, seeing, well, what is behind this, or
empowering diagnosis.
What is the set of circumstances that preceded this?
And what storyline can you put on it?
Yes. And talk a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Michael, you talk about successions. I mean, and let me finish the other question. I can't believe I'm keeping my head together right now about all these questions. But the Guardianology is the study of the guardian archetype within, and that there is a guardian archetype within. And the idea is that the archetype is like an inner compass, and it's a game of hot and cold. And I believe that's what this is. I mean, like, there are certain, like, no, you're getting colder. Now you're getting warmer. You're getting colder. You're getting warmer. But people are not really aware that this dynamic is going on, even if they're theological. They talk about God or consciousness or life's intelligence or the universe. But they don't really look at the fact that there is a directing, guiding force in this intelligence, in this God, in this consciousness. And I thought that needed to be highlighted. So the study of the guardian archetype within is Guardianology. And then, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's a huge statement, okay? Because what you just said is pretty much the core of your philosophy and why you do everything you do. And I think what's big about that is this is something you don't just believe. This is something you've witnessed,
observed
over and over again, clinically,
clinically,
and working with the body.
Right.
So this is the thing that excites me the most, is that everything that you've done, writing a book, we haven't got to life coaching yet. Life coaching, where you do some really deep work with some pretty big people with this stuff. It all comes from the body work.
It all comes from the body.
And we talked a lot about, we used to say, well, the body doesn't lie, nature doesn't lie, right? You plant a peach tree, you don't get an apple tree.
Absolutely.
It doesn't lie. There's laws of nature. Those same laws are in the body. And you've worked with the body on a very intimate level for many, many years, and you observe. That's I think one of the great things about the work that you do is your ability to observe. You talked about being able to sense tone and what's going on with someone by their tone or how they present.
Paying attention. You make connections. You pay attention and you organically
it's
make
a gift.
those connections.
I know a lot of it's learned, but it's also a gift, and that is so impressive what I see in the work you do. But because of that, and because of doing this for many, many years, where you're doing this on a daily basis, intimately observing, inputting the body, and seeing these things happen over and over and over and over and over, you came up with laws that are duplicatable. It's
reproducible. Absolutely phenomenal.
It's a research project,
right.
And you've developed work in life coaching and in the philosophy and from these observations. So can you talk a little bit about that? How you brought those same principles of Catalyst, of the body work, and developed things that you've done on a very big level, like the life coaching. I would refer
Yeah,
to that.
I'd love to speak into all of this. I think the laws came so early on. You're talking about law of resonance, law of polarity. I mean, there's so many laws, and the law of diminishing effects is probably one of the ones that's been such a game changer for me, and why it's so important for people to have rituals or practices. We call it scheduling your success, right? Because things wear off, and it doesn't matter what it is. And so I wish that these terms had already existed, but they didn't. And so what am I going to do? Not create them when clearly it's empowering to know that there is a law of diminishing effects. You eat, it only lasts so long. You exercise, it only lasts so long. You sleep, it only lasts so long. I don't care how horny you are. If you have sex, I'm okay now, fine, whew, good. It's only going to last so long. Well, sessions only last so long. And I do believe that we're supposed to be in each other's lives, that we each bring gifts to each other, and we each bring a component. I'm bringing a lot of gifts because of the Thrivapeutic. I'm bringing that. I'm bringing, people say, think for yourself. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of thinking for myself. And if people are considering the concepts that I'm putting forth, then they're thinking differently. It's probably going to open up their eyes and ears and their awareness to actually find what's in them just by considering something new. So I think that there's, we talk about laws all the time, law of polarity. That's a big one. Law of rhythm. That's a big one. And if you can look that everything has a season, right? It's right out of the Bible, right? To everything, right. turn, right? There is a season. Birds sang about it in the 60s, right? So that's big. Now, you throw out the word life coaching, and I'll tell you, honestly, I am moving away from that term, just like I move away from the term chiropractic, even though I'm proudly a chiropractor and I will never give up my license, and I think it's fantastic. I just choose not to be involved politically with what the definition is and what they tell me I have to do, because it's a regulated profession. Yeah. So what I wanted to do, and the reason I created Catalyst, is not to be irresponsible, though chiropractors can look at it that way because they're married to their parameters, right? Their protocols. Well, what if I am a creative source and I saw that things could be better? Well, I can only make them better by going through political models? No, so I'm going to create something that's called Catalyst. Now, life coaching, I used to use that term just because it gave people a clue at what I'm doing. But really, there are 4 types of catalyst care, and please forgive me for breaking this out, but just real fast. Type 1 is for the owies, right, and seeing it in a new way. Type 2 we know is functional integrity. Type 3 is the mind-body connection, and that's where we work diligently on intention. And then type 4 is the nonlinear work, like we call it blue. Well, type 3, you can align that mind-body connection. You can align the body to an intention, and Catalyst does that very, very well. But what about aligning the mind to the body? And that's where the whole coaching thing came in, and that's where talking with people was more important, because you don't want to just tell the body what it's supposed to do. Sometimes the mind has to learn from the body.
Right.
And so you have to actually coach people to listen to the body, to the guardian within, to that inner compass. And so that became coaching. But again, life coaching is a regulated profession. In some states, you have to be licensed to practice life coaching. And then they have their own criteria, their own protocols. God bless them. Really, I think it's fantastic to have regulated professions, but I want to be extraordinary and as a creative force. So I created greaterness coaching. And so that's what I believe that I do, just like I do Catalyst, that when I'm talking with people, it's greaterness coaching. And the whole thing is Thrivapeutic. And of course, forward healing and successions and all of these other terms. But that's really what I want to speak into. Was I'm just answering the call as somebody who has a piece of the holistic healthcare puzzle. And again, holistic health is redundant. So health is holistic. And I watch people shy away from doing something new as if it's a threat. And it's like, no, that's like throwing away pliers because it's a threat to the hammer. Sometimes you're going to need the hammer. We call it the human toolbox. Sometimes you're going to need the pliers. And you want to know about Thrivapeutics because it's going to come in handy one day. Trust me. You know, if it's not appropriate, then go, okay, this isn't appropriate right now. Great. Glad you make that decision. It's not my decision to make because I'm not a medical doctor. Only medical doctors can say this isn't a medical emergency. So you better go to your medical doctor and let them talk about multiple truths from their paradigm. What is and what isn't a medical emergency, and how this is going to be treated. And if it's going to be treated, or if they're just going to send you home. Either way, whatever they're giving you, you still have a therapeutic approach that's going to enhance your functionality, your participation in all this, which is probably going to enhance the results in the long term.
Right. And I love the way you stated it. I never heard you state it that way before, that, you know, you did a lot of work with the body work of helping people connect to their body, and then the life coaching, the books, the successions, all the other things that you do, helping the mind to begin to
integrate,
connect to the body.
There it is, the word.
To listen to the body, to
Absolutely.
start to be able to do that and understand.
Right.
And understand that, because I think that's something that's surely lacking.
Absolutely. I like to say we're deficient in that. We're therapeutic deficient. We're catalyst deficient. We're forward healing deficient. So the more that I can talk about that, the more people can at least be willing to consider the possibility that maybe. And if they do that, they're already participating differently just in the consideration phase.
Yeah. And I think, again, what I thought about it, one of the intentions I had when coming here is I know that you're in these different circles, like, you know, your acting circle, you have people know you a certain way, and the people that you life coach know you in a certain way, but they may not have experienced the body work. So
there are some, believe it or not.
I'm sure, yeah. And you know, and just all these different things that you've done and do, and just the idea that everything you do that I know of that's become big is come from that body work and that philosophy and the observations that you had. And I encourage people that know you and that have not experienced the body work to really, you know, it is pretty incrable. So,
right. And you could deliver it as well. I mean, I mean, they could be like, hey, Michael, you know, I saw that video that you did with Dr. Michael.
Yeah.
Would you do work on catalysts? Would you do catalysts with me?
There are catalysts out there.
Right.
So too, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because you can talk about that through the classes. You've been doing these for a long time now. So
yeah.
You've had the bodywork classes. You've had
better brain processes.
Classes.
Absolutely.
So I think most of it is either the bodywork or just like you described in terms of helping people through the philosophy and the principles and the concepts to connect to their body through that. So
well, that's good. You know, if there's anything that I am really proud of, it is the fact that I am so fulfilled, satiated even, in working with the people that I'm working with. You know, I've been working with these people, some of them 27 years, right? That's as long as I've been in practice. And how long have I been working with you? I mean, you know, when it comes to retention, obviously I'm doing something right, you know, because I'm what I call a fat cat, right? I don't have to new business development, right? I'm just absolutely satisfied in watching you continue to emerge and being a catalyst for that, right? And being I call myself a member on your success team, not the other way around, that I'm just a member on your greater success team. So you got medical doctors, and you've got counselors, and you've got therapists, and you've got a spouse, and you've got friends, and you've got coaches in the gym. You know, you would do well to have me on your team, and I'm going to bring some color and some flavor and definitely some plasticity, which is very, very important for health. I mean, I challenge anyone to say thinking differently is going to be a detriment to your health. It's not. To have your brain rewire means that you're more likely to be able to self-regulate. Homeostasis has a much higher probability just by having a brain that's more plastic.
More adaptability.
And I think that my concepts, given that they're so accurate and real and they hold up and practical and time tested, that just to consider them is amazingly healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked a lot about a lot of concepts, and you've gotten into some really, really good stuff. And I don't want to, I think it's right now, that's a lot for people to process in terms of understanding some of the philosophy behind everything.
Oh, I think you're going to Joe Rogan me. We were going to go for 3 hours. I was ready.
I do have a few more things I want to talk about.
Oh, please.
So another concept that I think is big, you know, and you've talked a lot about it, and I know from way back when, is supportive environments. And And I really, my wife is great about that, because she'll constantly talk about, like, for instance, supportive environments are pretty much anything that affects our senses. So it can be not just the people we're around or the circles we run with, but it's what we read, what we listen to, anything that affects our senses, even the body work.
Mm-hmm.
You've mentioned that. So I think that's a really big concept and a big process. I know, like, I'm riding in the car and, put the radio on, and if I come home and I'm bringing something up, my wife said, I hope you're not listening to the news again. Put that music on, what do you need? You don't need to be listening to that. And she's right. And so it's really, it's everything in the way the world is today. We're affected, and there's so many, social media, all these different things. So can you talk a little bit about supportive environments? 'Cause I think that's such a big one.
Well, I think people sometimes they want to know, what is a supportive environment? And so a supportive environment is one that's, mutually beneficial, where it's a win-win. That's really important, that there's mutual benefit, right? That's almost reciprocal, organically, that you're a contributor to the up-leveling of the people or the person that you're relating, as well as being uplifted yourself. And I think that that's really important, that you pay attention to that and find out what are supportive environments. And I always say, never underestimate the power of a supportive environment. It's one of the first quotes. And another one, which is about supportive environments, is that if you find yourself in a non-supportive environment, you're there to serve. Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening, people get frustrated because they're looking to be served or held in a certain environment. And it's like, hello, you're missing it. You're not paying attention. If it doesn't feel good, this is not where you're supposed to go for your sustenance. Then you have to, like, never underestimate the power of a supportive environment, right? That's another really important one, right? Mm-hmm. That's huge. Just saying that over and over again, never underestimate the power of a supportive environment. And if you're in an environment where, like, say you're at work and you're like, oh, I hate this place. I hate this place. I hate this place. It's like, that's because you're trying to gain sustenance from that place. Silly you. You're there to serve. You're there to serve that place. And it's like, yeah, but I need sustenance. Exactly. So where are you going to go? Mm-hmm. And you got to serve your supportive environments, because if you're only using your supportive environments like maniacally, I'm getting something from it. Oh, this is good. It's like horrible. That's not a really good supportive environment, because that's not sustainable. Most people think, like, when they come to me, that they can be maniacal because they're paying me. It's a fee for services. Like, I'm paying this so I can get something. It doesn't work that way. No. Doesn't work that way. It's got to be reciprocal, and it's got to be two ways. That's it. You're just paying for my time is really what it is. But I'm getting as much out of this stuff as you're getting out of this. Otherwise, I'm numb and I'm not learning or growing or staying on my own cutting edge. So what would love do now, right? What do we say? What would love do now in this situation? So I think about that all the time. And because I'm thinking about that all the time, I'm constantly creating newer psychotechnologies, because the answer is going to come, because I'm putting forth that question. What would love do now? Not what would Dr. Michael do? Not what would the professional do? What would the regulated profession say we should handle this? What would love do now?
So that's great. And so with that, a couple other concepts you talk about, like just asking quality questions.
Absolutely.
And it just triggered another one.
Solution-focused quality questions.
Solution-focused quality questions. It'll come back to me, but go ahead on that one.
No, yeah. Well, Bill Laney, again, who's my catalyst, he talks about, like, the answers are actually in the question. Inherent, intrinsic, within the question is the answer. Just like we say, the area of manifestation where it hurts, right? You could find the area of influence, right? The solution, the peace, breath, movement, fluidity within that area. And there is a specific plugging in, right? We call it hookup, right? Mm-hmm. There's a specific point in the body that connects to this specific owie. And if you can connect the two, and there is one, and if you can be present enough to find it and to scan it and to track it, right? We call it tracking. Mm-hmm. Well, that's huge. And so if your questions are of the highest quality, oh my gosh, your answers are going to be amazing. So if I say, what's wrong with me? I would imagine that the answer is not going to be very good.
Great
it's not
point.
Going to be supportive. It's going to put you in a different recursion. Mm-hmm. Have you fault finding? You're not going to be optimal. You're going to be beating yourself up. You're going to be fueling a defeatist mindset. But if I said, how is this supporting me? Oh my God, think about that question. Now, so the assumption is intrinsic in the question is that it's supportive. Well, people go, well, what if it's not supportive? And they're like, okay, you can consider that multiple truths. But what if it is? Are you deficient in considering that it might be supportive? Are you deficient in, oh, Houston, we got a problem here? But most people are, Houston, we got a problem here, as a reflex, but they're living in it, they're ruminating in it, and that's the bigger problem, is they're not seeing the wisdom, the elegance, the poetry, the life, all of it. They're not seeing the sanctity in it. I'd like them to consider it. Whether it's right or not is completely irrelevant. Just get out of the rumination and the recursion that's making you get the same results that you're getting.
So from this, segue into telling greatest stories.
Storytelling. Oh, I love it. Now you're getting into it, man. Whew. Well, storytelling for me started back in Guardianology, the 7th step, interpretation. It has responsible interpretation, okay? And that's right before, what is it? Intention, vision, and right action. 8, 9, and 10. So when you're doing intention, and this is really something that's been coming back right now, just so you know, this is up again right now. People don't relate to events. They don't. They think they are, but they're not. People don't relate to their spouse. People are relating to their own interpretation of events. That's what they're relating to. They're having a relationship. You said something that was very disrespectful. You interpreted it as being disrespectful, and now you're relating to disrespect. So you interpreted it that way. Oh, but most people would interpret it that way. It's like, now you're justifying, interpreting it a singular way. Could it be interpreted other ways? And that's called response-able interpretation. And you start telling greater and greater stories. Believe it or not, the higher I call it exalting it. The higher the story that you can attribute to the presentation of something, the more you're exalting it, the more you're giving it a higher purpose. And it also feels good because you're giving it purpose. Because guess what? If life is intelligence, then everything is purposeful. So if you're dense, you're probably not listening to the guardian within. You're not going to the peace, breath, movement, and fluidity with now the swirl, of feeling that, wow, I'm attributing purpose to this chaos. Now I'm more optimally functioning because I'm swirlful, because I'm optimal, because I'm taking it with the right mindset. One of my greatest quotes now, there's a new website that's just been produced for me called mydrmichael.com. And if you open up that website, they took my quote and it says, if you get your head right, get your mindset right, you will discover the rest. And man, that is so true.
Yeah.
And
it seems like too part of not taking it personal.
Right.
Story.
Yeah, right. Or if you are taking it personally, don't just take it exclusively personally on behalf of one saboteur or one tyrant or one dominant version of you.
Circumstances that preceded.
Right. Sometimes we advocate for our stuckedness or our sameness, and then is at the, again, the mercy of our quote unquote greaterness. So storytelling for me is an opportunity for you to participate more in creating purpose out of chaos and going, how is this happening for me? How is this working? How am I going to grow through this? What am I to learn? All these high quality questions that the answers are going to be so empowering instead of victimizing. Do you get it?
It forms a much better story.
Much a better story. And it's higher and it feels good. And that's good. And then you're giving yourself purpose.
Yeah, habit of mind, scanning for what's good. That's awesome. We covered a lot again. I wanted to, before we wrap up, give you opportunity to speak some more on any of this, because I want to interrupt right now. First off, I want to speak because this is me. I want to acknowledge you right now because this was your idea, and you came in with these questions, and I think I've been deficient in explaining this or unpacking this for the lay people like this, for people who just can get a glimpse of Dr. Michael and say, well, I knew he was doing something. I know he's being recognized. I know he's up and coming, but they still don't really know what I do. And, the fact that I've been at this for so long, and that these concepts have shown themselves, and you can corroborate this, that they hold up. They hold up after 27 years. I believe they're going to hold up for another 1,027 years. These concepts and ideas, and the fact is that they're new. And that makes it exciting. And the brain loves stimuli. We talk about the brain loves oxygen. The brain loves movement, but it loves stimuli. And so new information like this that's practical and useful, that you can integrate for yourself however you want and whenever you want,
is very, very powerful. There's a complete like sovereign mystery there that you can start adopting this in a very unique way.
You've created a lot of avenues into this too. With if someone may be averse to being touched with the body work,
right?
You know, there's the life coaching, or there's successions, or there's the books.
Right.
And so there's a lot of ways to get this information into your.
And some people will we call it the unknown face, right? Some people will organically go, oh my God, this is what I'm looking for. Other people will see this and go, yeah, that'd probably be helpful, but they'll never do anything about it. And that's why we call it scheduling your success, because you've got to stop the tyrant from running your show, your inner tyrant, your inner recursion. You're so busy being true to yourself that you sabotage the fact that you do want to improve and you want to have a better life and you want to make things better at the same time that you're being true to yourself. And I'm just begging people, start giving your greaterness a voice. Start giving your greater self a voice. Don't let that inner tyrant continue to dominate and control and keep you stuck. You might feel good and all noble in being true to yourself, but the reality is you're being true to the smallest aspect of yourself that you're giving 98% of your life and attention to, which means you're sacrificing much greater parts of yourself that you give very little attention to. And that's your higher functionality. Yeah. And so that's a big part of all of this.
Yeah. And again, there's so many things to talk about, but that's a really, to maybe finish up with that and then any suggestions. But I think today, there's a lot of anxiety going on with the world, and you can feel it, and I think too, people pretty much are, I don't know the word, but they're taking on a position, and they don't seem to want to consider.
There it is.
So, anything else you want to add?
Well, let me go into
people go into a lot of like, what's the word? The hacks. Any advice for people?
I just want to go into forward healing. I want to do forward healing because we haven't even touched upon it.
That'd be great.
It's a huge piece to all of this, and what forward healing is stepping well into your new life, your ever emerging life, and meeting it where it's going. Like Wayne Gretzky, I skate to where the puck is going, not to where the puck is. Well, what if you were to skate to where your life is going, not where your life is? What if you were to advocate for your greater self? And there's 5 phases in the forward healing process. And the 5 phases I think they're beautiful and they hold up and they've been going for so long. The forward healing is all about, okay, I'm reactive, right? That's stage 1, the reactive phase. And then you're like, wait a minute, I don't want to be here anymore. Well, you got to really get to that point where you don't want to be there anymore. You got to realize that, hey, I want to change. I don't want to be here. And then you go into like, okay, so I'm going to be considerate, right? I want to be responsible now. So the first thing I have to do is consider something differently, right? And that's forward healing, just to consider it. That's why I always say to be considerate. If you're going to be considerate, all you have to do is consider it. Then, and that's the big one, what does it mean to be response-able? Meaning you don't have to advocate for your primitive brain. You don't have to advocate for your animalistic brain, the primal brain. You can start being an advocate for your higher brain. And the more you do it, the more you go to another higher brain or have access tomorrow to a higher brain. Then if you take that step, then you'll have access to another higher brain. So we call that response-able. And I believe that's what it means to be responsible. I think our responsibility is to have the ability to respond. And then once you do that, you're going to forward heal. You're going to create purpose out of chaos. You're going to create meaning in a meaningless world. And how important is that? I don't know how much more you can do. I mean, if you want to be a great, great lover, if you want to have great money, great wealth, and great love and great purpose, there is no better way to do it. If you're trying to technique your way there, haven't you noticed it doesn't work? And even if it did work, here's the other one. It's, ready? Indoctrinating. So there's certain studies that you can have. They're either indoctrinating studies, they're bringing you into their model, or they're empowering. And I believe mine is empowering. I believe if you use this language, it might say, well, it's indoctrinating because we're talking about greaterness and forward healing and thrivapeutics. And it's like, yeah, keep a lookout. Tell me if it's limiting or if it's expanding your life by talking like this, going, what would love do now? You could say that's indoctrinating, but I'm gonna offer to you look at it real closely. Take the red pill on this one. You're going to see it's expansive. That languaging is very, very important. And the reason I'm using these words, and I'd like for you to mirror these words. Think of forward healing instead of healing. Healing, something's wrong. Forward healing, I got calls to answer, right? And the more you use these words, the more you're participating in these models, the more you're going to get the result and the benefit. And even more importantly, to be real honest with you, you then become an advocate for it. You become like a vortex, if you will, or an energy source of all of this awesomeness. Which is really true. I mean, it's nice. People would want to do that. People want to not make life about themselves. They want to have a greater purpose, a greater contribution, a greater meaning. Well, adopt this stuff, try it, and see what happens, and see if people don't respond differently to you, more favorably, if everything becomes more lighter, more enjoyable, more I got thisness, right?
Awesome. Oh, it's great to have this stuff on tape.
Well, yeah. Well, I know who's going to watch it. There's the question. Well, you know me, because I got 24 viewers. Yeah. I'm really proud of the fact that I am a fat cat and I'm satiated at the level that I am, even though I know this stuff deserves to blow up. And people say, well, you got a call to answer. You should get, I've got Forward Healing coming, right? We've got a TV series coming with Forward Healing, which is pretty exciting. So, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I don't have to push. I mean,
hopefully as people, do get more involved, they can get a little bigger understanding from this. That would be the hopes.
Well, Michael, I think this helps a lot. I really do. I think that this was, a good synopsis. As you know, there's so much more behind this.
Yeah.
But at least, people can lean into it. I said, lean into it. You have an idea of what's possible. And even if they don't call, if they just consider these concepts, that's plenty. Yeah. They don't have to call. People are so worried about their money. Everybody feels it, and they should be, because everybody's always trying to go into their wallets and in their pockets, right? And then they call me, and it's like, oh, now it's going to cost me. And it's like, yeah, I get that. I totally get that. Just check out, they call the ROI. Just check out the return on your investment, And you don't even have to do it. Like I said, just watch this tape a few times, put it back on. Yeah. If this is on YouTube, play it a few times. Schedule your success.
There's a lot to chew on there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to chew on.
You can get so much benefit.
Yeah. And again, you can spend a lot of time on any one of those topics. I know go on and on, but I think those were some key ones, at least, hopefully, that people can chew on.
Well, again, I wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for doing this and coming with
pleasure,
these specific questions. I think that there is a deficiency in me. I don't like to make it about me promoting myself, even though I talk a lot and I say a lot, but it really is about the work. I'm doing everything about the work. And so it was fun for me to have you kind of pick my brains and have, cause me to actually answer some serious questions that are going to help people understand what this is all about. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Next time, huh?
Yeah, we'll do it again.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
All right.